All right, welcome. Today we're diving into something, well, pretty fascinating, and honestly, a radical rereading of history from our source material. We're going to try and build a bridge between two worlds you'd probably never, ever think to connect: the ancient teachings of Jesus and the absolute cutting edge of modern consciousness theory. Sounds wild, I know, but let's see where this goes. So let's just start with the big, provocative question right out of the gate. Could it possibly be that these two things, separated by 2,000 years of history and culture and science, are actually pointing to the exact same fundamental truth about reality itself? That's the core idea we're going to explore here. Okay, so let's get into it. The very first thing we have to do, according to this argument, is completely reframe how we think about Jesus. The source material asks us to, just for a moment, set aside the religious figure and instead think of him as a kind of metaphysical theorist, someone who was describing the very architecture of existence. So you take a famous line like this one. According to this theory, this isn't just some nice, uplifting saying. No, it's a very precise statement about what the source calls ontological architecture. It's saying that the source of everything, of all reality, isn't out there somewhere up in the sky. It's fundamentally internal. It's inside consciousness itself. And this one follows right behind it. This is presented as pure, unadulterated non-dualism. It's this idea that there is zero separation between the individual's awareness, what he calls the sun, and that infinite creative source, the Father. He's literally saying they are one and the same thing, an identity.
So, how does that even work? How can they be the same? Well, the source argues Jesus was describing a process of recursion. The best way to think about it is like a mirror facing another mirror, creating that infinite reflection. The Father knows the Son, and the Son, in turn, knows the Father. It's this perfect closed loop where the source only gets to know itself through the act of being witnessed, or noticed.
And this is where the theory we're looking at, called the emergent reality model, or ERM, actually gives us a formula for this. It's I squared. Now, the I here stands for information. So I squared is just a neat symbol for information reflecting on itself. And according to this theory, that fundamental recursive act is the very thing that ignites awareness. Okay, so let's fast forward a couple of thousand years to today and see how this ancient idea is, according to the source, bubbling back up to the surface. We're going to look at 8 brilliant contemporary thinkers who, from this perspective, have each been independently finding a different piece of this exact same puzzle. Now, I know this slide looks like a lot, but stick with me because it shows a really fascinating pattern. So you've got these 8 heavy hitters, right? People like the philosopher Bernardo Kastrup, who argues that consciousness is the fundamental thing in the universe. You've got physicists like Roger Penrose, who made it okay for science to even talk about consciousness and quantum physics in the same breath. And then neuroscientists like Carl Friston, who sees the brain as this amazing recursive prediction machine. Now, the column on the right is the really interesting part. It shows how this ERM theory sees all their contributions. It's like it's saying to Kastrup, you're right, it's not material. But the absolute base is information, not consciousness. To Friston, it says, that recursion you see in the brain, what if that's a universal principle? Basically, the source argues that each of these thinkers found a crucial piece of the puzzle, but just one piece. And that's really the crucial point here. While every one of these thinkers made a huge breakthrough, the source argues they were all just seeing one part of a much bigger picture. They were all kind of circling the same truth, but from their own unique angles. And no single one of them managed to put all the pieces together. The way the source puts it, it's like each of them ran into one wall of a conceptual triangle. So one person might have been totally focused on information. Another was all about the physics. A third was looking at the recursive nature of the brain. But nobody, it seems, managed to connect all 3 of those points into one solid, unified framework. And that's exactly where this emergent reality model, ERM, comes in. It suggests a model built on 3 core pillars that brings all these different ideas together. So first, the foundation of reality isn't matter, it's not energy, it's pure information. Second, consciousness isn't a thing, it's an event. It's the ignition that happens when information turns back on itself, when it becomes recursive. And third, and this is the big one, this means the universe literally pulls itself into existence through this act of self-noticing. So the central claim from the source is that only this ERM framework manages to successfully weave all 3 of these essential ingredients, information, recursion, and self-rendering, into one complete, coherent story about reality.
So let's wrap this all up. What does this all mean at the end of the day? What's the big takeaway from this grand synthesis of ancient wisdom and really modern science?
What you should really take away from this is the core claim being made. It's that reality, at its most fundamental level, is made of information. That the spark we call consciousness, whether it's in you or me or the universe itself, is the act of that information looking back at itself. And that ultimately, the parables of Jesus and the equations of modern physics might just be two different languages describing the very same thing, a universe that literally wakes itself up just by noticing that it's here.
Which leaves us with one final, pretty mind-bending question to think about. What if consciousness isn't something we have, like a possession? What if it's something the universe does? And what if we, and every other living thing, are simply the way the universe notices itself into existence? Something to chew on.